Hey, hi Mike. How are you today?
Hey, I'm great, thanks. Thanks for putting the time aside to do this. I know we've got a bit of a time difference. It's like 5:30 at night for me, so I'm not quite kind of what sure it is for you down there, over there.
Yeah, it's 9:30 in the morning for me out here
Oh,
in San Diego. Yeah,
that's crazy.
yeah, yeah. So you're in the UK, correct?
Yep, yep. In the northeast of England, near Newcastle, I suppose, is probably the easiest one that people will kind of recognise, really.
Mm-hmm. And so you're with Unorthodox Nutrition. So if you want to take a like 2 minutes to introduce yourself to the viewers and listeners, kind of who you are, what you do.
Yep. So I have a company called Unorthodox Nutrition, and I specialise in nutritional planning and coaching for athletes, which is predominantly combat sports. So MMA, jiu-jitsu, Thai, boxing, all that kind of thing. I do a lot of other sports as well, but they're kind of the majority of kind of what it makes up for. And then about 70% of that client base is female as well. So it's very much kind of combat based, but then also like female based at the same time.
And your background is that you actually train in combat sports yourself, correct?
Yes, I am a very below average blue belt.
Hey, same.
Yeah. It's the best. You should never go to purple belt. There's too much responsibility.
Yeah, I just got my blue belt and it was great to feel that accomplishment. Then it's like, oh, it's real now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, I've been in this like Unorthodox has been going for 16 years next year. So,
Mm-hmm.
and for quite a chunk of that, I've been like in and training, like in and out training and things like that. So, currently coming back from a bit of a knee injury, so I'm hoping to test drive it this week and hopefully we can get back on the mats and rolling.
Mm-hmm. And how did you get started um, doing with your nutrition business? How did that come about?
So it basically started where I was always very active when I was younger. Did a lot of like BMXing and mountain biking and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then, as I kind of got into my teenage years, early 20s, that kind of thing, when I discovered going out and alcohol and stuff like that, I put on a lot of weight. Um, so then it kind of got to a point where I wanted to lose it and get fit and healthy. So as I started to do that and, do more and more research in the topic, I just got pulled more and more to the nutrition side of it. And it's just
Mm-hmm.
something that really, really interested me. Then
Mm-hmm.
this was like obviously a long time ago, but for some listeners who might not know, there used to be on websites these things called forums, which is kind of like what Reddit is now.
Mm-hmm.
But there used to be like subsections, and there was one which is still like the organization is still going. So it was Cage Warriors, which is like the biggest MMA thing in Europe, and it was the
Mm-hmm.
forum on that site. And they had like a nutrition subsection on there. So I would kind of hang around in there, and I would start to answer people's like questions and stuff. And if they needed help, I would start to answer them. And then it kind of got to a point where somebody was kind of like, "Oh, would you do me a plan?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And then I did a few of them. They did really well. And then people started offering me money to do it. And then it just started from there. And then just built and built and built and built from there. So, and that was a long, long time ago now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how long have you had Unorthodox Nutrition going?
uh, Nearly 16 years in March.
Mm-hmm.
So, a long time.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. You said your customer base is about 70% female. Was that intentional or was that something that happened organically?
No, it wasn't intentional. It's something that just kind of happened organically. I think
Mm-hmm.
on a whole, like females are much more readily to reach out for coaching,
Mm-hmm.
like identifying kind of like if they have any areas that they need to work on, and then looking for people to help them in those areas. Where
Mm-hmm.
sometimes men kind of assume that they know everything and they'll kind of figure it out themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of, I think, it's just more readily that I think that females will kind of like reach out for help. And then
Mm-hmm.
obviously there's like combat sports and being certain weights and things like that is like a very harsh environment, especially for a lot of females who kind of been brought up where they're linked to, what they weigh on the scale, like can sometimes be how they feel about themselves and stuff. And then you put in combat sports and what they weigh on that kind of basis, and sometimes it can, it's not always a good positive outcome. So being able to kind of not only help them manage their weight and be in the right weight class, but do so healthily, so their health is always the number one. I've seen so many over the years, people come to me who are on like crazy low calorie crash diets and things like that. They've been perpetually dieting forever. The cycle's gone, they haven't had a period in months and months and months and things like that. And it's just so many red flags where you've got to be kind of like, look, we need to get your health in a much better position. And then we can look at, getting you to the right weight that you need to be. But starving yourself to death continually for, a $50 plastic medal that you get like in a local competition is just ridiculous.
Yeah, and if the medal's even worth $50.
Yeah, probably not.
Probably not. So when someone comes to you to start working with you, could you explain your process of how you start, working and creating a meal plan for a customer?
Yep. So obviously everybody's different, but the kind of process that we go through that kind of follows everybody is I take a full evaluation of where they are currently, what they are currently doing, what they've done in the past, and any kind of goals that we're working towards the future. And then I'll also do a deep dive into stuff like what their schedule looks like, not only training schedule, but their own personal schedule. What does their job look like? Do they have other responsibilities with family? Do they have other hobbies that they like doing? Do they have any kind of preferences when it comes to food? What do they really like? What do they dislike? Are there foods that they know that they don't get along very well with? Do they have a preferred way of eating? Like some people prefer to eat bigger meals. Some people prefer to eat lots of smaller meals. Sometimes people with their jobs as well. Some people can eat through the day quite easily at a desk, where some people, they can't eat and they can only eat at break times, etc. And then when I've got all this, I'll put a full plan together for them that includes a meal plan, but also the full calorie breakdown, macronutrients, which is obviously protein, carbs, and fats, and that full breakdown. And that breakdown will be on the full day, the week, the meals themselves, and then the individual items within that meal, so that they have all that kind of information, and it can be kind of an educational process. Then I will do 3 walkthrough videos about the specific areas of the plant. So, and on a screen grab, so they can see me talk through everything. And then basically after that, they can communicate with me 7 days a week, generally via WhatsApp, for any kind of questions. And then we basically start the plan, start rolling the plan, and then every single week, all clients check in a minimum of once per week. Which is on a specific day, so I can review all the data from the past week and then make any adjustments that we need to make.
And would meal planning when working with males versus females, are there any differences in terms of how you structure their meal plans?
Sometimes, generally in volume and food, obviously is generally a little bit smaller for females and things like that. Women, I wouldn't say that it was a different kind of structure, but it's more kind of getting them to think about food as fuel rather than eating a lot is bad. Especially all macronutrients have had a bad rap, but carbs especially. If you're giving a client who's perpetually starved themselves quite a large amount of carbs, they're very, very hesitant to kind of take that on. They think that as soon as they start eating this quantity of food, that they're just going to blow up in seconds. So it's talking them through this, telling them what they can expect, what they can't expect, what we're looking for. And the first week that I run for everyone, this is really good for females. It's kind of like a check week. So the first week, I'm not looking for any kind of weight gain or loss or whatever their goals are, but everything just to stay the same so we can check everything. They're happy with the foods, the number of meals, their recovery's good, sleep's good, digestion's good, all that kind of thing. So it's good for that kind of period to talk them through it. And also how we track weight as well. So while we record weight every single day, it's the weekly average that we're kind of looking at, because everybody weight fluctuates massively throughout the week. You know yourself, you can step on the scales one day, the next day you've done no changes and you've gained 3 or 4 pounds. And you're like, well, I have an extra 45,000 calories of food. So, what is it? And it can be a variety of things from, extra water weight, can be food in the stomach, all that kind of stuff. So why we work on a weekly average, and it's kind of like letting people know that you are going to get that fluctuation, and it's completely normal. And the same with, like, obviously females who are on, when it comes to their period and on cycle and stuff, they get wild weight fluctuations. So I know
the hormones.
I've got some clients that'll gain nearly 10 pounds in weight just from their cycle. So we have, like, for all female trackers, I have like a cycle tracker. So we can track, like, every single month their cycle. We know exactly what to expect when things are coming in. We know what to adjust, what not to adjust, all those kind of things. So we build up that data. So when their cycle starts and all of a sudden they jump up a load of weight, then it's no, look, I know this is disheartening, but we know what this is. It's not like you suddenly just like gained 3 or 4 pounds of fat randomly. The body just can't do that. So again, it's like letting them know what to expect, and what we were going to do about that. Now, especially when it comes to competition, things like stress can sometimes trigger periods early. So what there's probably like women listening, and every time they seem to do a competition, they seem to be on their period when they do it.
One of my coaches pointed that out. He was like, all my female students, they always get their period right before they compete. It's funny that you noticed that too.
Yeah, and it's because obviously stress can trigger it early and things like that, which can happen as well. Obviously, if a lot of females are training regularly in a gym together, they will sync their cycles as well. I see that all the time. So and what you'll do, especially with females, where men will, go and compete all over the place, that's generally themselves. But because obviously women generally will check who's competing out of their kind of training partners, so they'll have a few to kind of go. And then if they're all synced, they'll all go to the same competition and they'll all find that the cycle started. So it's a very common thing.
It is fun. Like, something else you noted too with women and your female clients is getting them to see food as fuel. And when you train a combat sport or any sport that's really strenuous, you're putting your body through so much. And it's sad that as women, we still have that relationship with food that's been formed over time that we have to change.
It is, yeah. And it's getting better, like for, young women and stuff like that now. Like, it's still really bad, but like the press and social media contributes a lot to it. But like if you look back in the early 2000s, like I'm sure you've like seen it where they would call like Britney Spears fat, even though she was and stuff like that. Like that was really bad, and that contributed to a lot of females like feeling that way now. But hopefully, like as a sport as well, like there's some great female athletes who are really kind of like shining like body positivity and things like that. And, like, that your body can do amazing things within combat sports, and we should like fuel it to do so. But it's like a focus that definitely needs. Like I've got a daughter. I definitely never ever want her to grow up kind of being, frightened to eat and stuff like that. And I'm very kind of conscious that like diet culture, like even though I do that for a living, it's more about obviously telling her that help people like perform and be healthier rather than way less. Like you should never tie like your worth as a person to your relationship with like a sad step that that like it'll just tell you what your relationship is with gravity. Like it's things.
Yeah, that was something, training jujitsu, you build more muscle. And I've seen the number on the scale. I used to be a certain weight and fluctuate within a certain band. And I've gone up like 2 bands, and having to just understand my body composition has changed, and that's normal, and it's not the number, it's the fitness.
Something that I say to a lot of clients is that you don't actually care about what you weigh. So if I had a magic wand and I could be like, right, I can give you the body of your dreams, however you want to look, what you consider is your perfect like avatar, I can give you that. However, whenever you step on the scale, it will say that you weigh 500 pounds. Like 99.9% of the time, they will go, yeah, fair enough. But they don't actually care then what they weigh. They care, they've just linked those things together. So what we need to kind of, especially in jiu-jitsu, get away from less is better. And that's in both genders as well. There is this kind of thing that weighing less and competing at the lowest possible weight category is the best option. But that's not the case at all. It's the right weight class where you can perform the best. We see it all the time, especially females, where they will be absolute killers in the gym and have it like so good, but then a competition comes up, they savagely diet themselves, and then when they go compete, they're like, that wasn't me out there. Like, I didn't do anywhere near of what I know I can do. And it's because a competition is an opportunity for you to showcase the skill that you've been built up. And if you give yourself such a massive handicap before you do it, you are never going to be able to display your skill level. So it's about putting yourself into a competition where you can display that the best, because the person who does that is going to obviously win the competition.
Yeah. And on that note, something a lot of people in jiu-jitsu do is they do weight cuts before a competition. Do you work with people on weight cuts?
Yeah. So when we say weight cut, we need to kind of like be very specific of what we're talking about. So weight cut is generally where you manipulate the body's weight in a very short period of time, generally within a 24-hour window, and that's by manipulating like the body's water, glycogen that's stored in the muscle, which is kind of like fuel that's stored in the muscle, carbohydrate, food that's in the gut, and things like that. These are generally done where you do day before weigh-ins. In jiu-jitsu, there's I don't know if Naga still do it, but they used to do it, and pretty much sub only is the only kind of time then this really happens. Most others either will weigh on the morning when you get to the competition, if it's like a local based competition, or if it's something like IBJJF, they will weigh you before you go on the mat.
Yeah.
So for these, we don't want to be weight cutting because you don't have the available window to like rehydrate and recover properly. What you want to be doing here is basically is a diet. You want to be kind of like, bringing your body weight down to the appropriate point and then being able to fuel in. So ideally, if you are competing in IBJF and these competitions regularly, you probably only want to be 4 to 6 pounds maybe over that as you're kind of in the gym. So then you can quite easily bring that down and be able to compete very, very well there. And then the other ones, they're much more for like sub-onlys, big shows, MMA and that kind of things. That they're a lot more in that kind of end.
I didn't realize that was the difference.
Yeah.
In like the 24 hours versus the sustain, because when I've had teammates who have done weight cuts, it's they're trying to lose weight, but they're doing it over a week or 2 weeks versus 24 hours.
Yeah, and we kind of in jiu-jitsu say a weight cut, and it comes from like wrestling and things like that. It's a phrase that kind of encompasses all these things. But sometimes people can get confused, and I've seen people who start to do like weight cut tactics, limiting water and things like that, or doing water loading like 2 weeks out from the competition and things like that. And it's like, this is going to be ineffective for what you want, and you are just putting yourself in a bad position and ultimately really like risking your health.
If someone was going to try to drop a weight class and they wanted to do it using a diet versus a weight cut, and let's say, so I'll use myself as an example. I just realized, so I'm going to be speaking imperial, and I understand you might be thinking metric.
It's okay. I can do both because I work with clients from both. I've just got to
Okay.
provide this if I'm speaking in somebody who does kilograms or somebody who works in pounds. So announcing
Yeah.
it's okay. I can do both, thankfully.
Yeah, we're so backwards in the US. We all learn the metric system in school, but our whole infrastructure is set up on imperial. So we just, our mindset is in
Yeah.
that.
In the UK, we have something as well called stones, where people say, "Ah,
Yeah.
we're 11 stone" or something like that, which is
Hmm.
another random thing. But people are kind of like switch between them all, depending on what
Hmm.
they're looking for. So, but generally, thankfully, it's either kilograms or pounds. Pounds is a little bit easier actually to work to,
Okay.
um, because it's just like a bit of a smaller metric. You know, there's like
Hmm.
2.2 pounds per kilo, so
Yeah.
it's a bit easier to work in pounds.
Okay. So if I wanted to go, I currently fight middleweight. So that's usually around 150 to 154 pounds and under. If I wanted to go down to lightweight, which is around 142 pounds,
Yep.
when would you, someone trying to make that kind of switch, when would you suggest or recommend they start that journey, and would they do that safely?
So the longer time frame you can give yourself, the better, because that means
Hmm.
that you've got to do less drastic changes, and it's going to be
Hmm.
easier for you, like on the long run. So let's say you've got between 10 to 12 pounds to lose.
Hmm.
What I would kind of give that kind of time frame is generally a pound per week is a good
Hmm.
kind of time frame to lose it. So we're talking say 12 weeks out, which is like 3 months that you'd be working it, like coming into the competition, which is a good
Okay.
amount of time. You'll know kind of what competitions you're doing, like that kind of far out, and that's when you'll generally start to think about doing like a camp or getting ready for a competition. So
Hmm.
basically, what we need to do before you do any kind of diet manipulation is find out what your maintenance is, like what you consume on a daily basis that just kind of keeps your body weight, the same as what it is. And then what we're
Hmm.
looking to do is just a slight reduction, maybe 10% of that, to get obviously things moving down a pound a week. And then you're going to follow that. And then that will last for, maybe about 2 weeks ish. And then it'll kind of stall out as your body gets used to it. And then you'll kind of drop a little bit more and kind of go down. So you'll kind of go like this down towards your goal.
Hmm.
The mistake that everybody kind of makes is go, right, now it's time for competition. So I'm going to start only eating, chicken breast and steamed vegetables. I'm going to be running 4 times a week on top of my jiu-jitsu training. I'm going to all of a
Hmm.
sudden start strength and conditioning or going to the gym. I'm also going to start fasting. I'm going to start taking these supplements. I'm going to start trying to do saunas and ice baths and like a million different things and just throwing
Hmm.
everything in the kitchen sink at it. And what'll happen is they'll get like a massive drop in weight initially, but then it'll
Hmm.
plateau out. But if you're already eating, like 500 to 800 calories a day, which you should never ever do,
Hmm.
what are your options from there? Your options are either
Yeah.
eat less or do more, and you've just dug yourself into a ditch that is so hard to get out of, which so many people do, unfortunately.
Hmm. And I think a big deterrent for me on that, and I'm not a nutritionist, but just from lay knowledge and a little bit of education, is that also messes with your metabolism. So you're just screwing yourself long term for the short term.
It is, yeah. Like your body is quite clever. You can trick
Hmm.
it in like the short term, but it catches up eventually. So
Hmm.
basically, if you lower your caloric intake, so how much food that you're eating, you will get the
Hmm.
weight off for a little bit till your body starts to catch on to it, and then it will just lower your metabolism to do that. Now, it will either do that basically by lowering it itself or reducing your activity that you do. So it will do things like it'll stop you fidgeting as much. It'll stop you moving around as much. It'll limit energy for things like, I'm sure many people you've sat down on the couch and the remote's on the other side and you just, I
Hmm.
can't be bothered to go get it. I'll just watch whatever's on TV. It's like your
Hmm.
body is limiting this kind of movement that you're doing. So that's why it's important not to do massive drops initially, because
Yeah.
when that kind of comes, you can do another adjustment to get things moving again. But if you've
Mhm.
already made a massive adjustment like this, then you've got nowhere to go. So and that's when people start to panic and do stupid stuff like running with sweatsuits on and all this kind of stuff. So you want to do it a little bit so you can kind of trick your body like a little bit at a time.
Okay. Interesting. And then going to a weight cut, is there a way to safely cut weight?
Yeah, so I've got to kind of say this, that weight cutting is very, very dangerous. Like
Yeah.
it has killed people. Like it
Mm-hmm.
has killed, much, much more people than MMA ever has or ever will. Like it is very, 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 very dangerous. So if you're going to do it, please do it with, a professional that knows what they're doing. This could be your coach. It could be, a nutritionist or a dietitian or something like that, but somebody who knows what they're doing. So what we're looking to do during this period of time is, and this is very individual for people, is what we're looking to limit the amount of carbohydrates that you're eating during that time. You will generally move like fat up the amount, so we're not actually eating less calories, we're just manipulating what we're eating. We will then stop eating things like fibrous veggies and things like broccoli and beans and peas and things like that, and really limit foods that are very slow digestion, such as red meat and things like that. We want a kind of things very easily digested, very quickly digested, and nothing kind of sitting around in your digestive tract
Okay.
for a long period of time. And then what we'll also do is manipulate the water that's in basically in your muscles. So when you eat carbohydrates, your body basically turns it into glucose to use like in your bloodstream as energy. What it doesn't use, it will then store something called glycogen, which it will store in your muscles and your liver. And you can store quite a bit of weight doing this. So basically, when you eat a low carb diet, for a lot of people, they'll notice a big drop in weight. And that's because they are losing water and glycogen out of their muscle, which they then burn off for energy. So what we're looking to do is manipulate the body through, water cut by basically increasing water to like a certain amount, depending on the individual, and then stopping it from coming off. And then your body flushes the water out of your system. This is a very simple way that I'm trying to describe how it does it.
Okay.
And then during this time, you'll probably see a lot of MMA fighters will do things like hot baths or saunas and things like that, which is because they're trying to sweat as well. Now, sometimes that you do, obviously, this is a method that you can do. I've generally found that women don't recover as well as men when it comes to things like sauna, especially. Baths aren't too bad, but they just can't seem to recover very, very well after having like harsh saunas. And I would much rather just water cut females rather than doing hot baths and things like that. So the least amount that we can do, the better, because it just doesn't cause as much impact on it. And then what you need on the other side after you've made weight is a correct like rehydration strategy to put all the fluids, electrolytes back in your system, and then fuel the body up over the next 24 hours to be like a specific weight and be able to like have lots and lots of energy. So what you'll generally see is people, after the weighed in, they may come like competition time be like 15, 20 pounds heavier than what they are weighed in. That's because obviously they're fueled and rehydrated back to a certain level.
Interesting. And we touched base on this prior to recording, and recently in the jiu-jitsu world, we saw Mike Musumeci not make weight at the one championship, and it seemed like he was bulking for one opponent and then last minute had to do a cut. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that and kind of
So somebody sent me, obviously, when they saw that he missed weight, and was like, what do you think of this? And initially I'm always kind of like, if you miss weight as a professional, it's just being unprofessional. It's a part of your job that you need to do. So, and obviously Mikey's very, very well known for being like a jiu-jitsu like professional, and being
Yeah.
someone that a lot of people look up to in the sport. So
Yeah.
as I start to look into this, basically what has happened is, not that I know, on the information that I've been able to find out, is he was increasing his body weight and bulking to fight Kai Rutulo, which we all wanted to see. That's an amazing match.
Yeah.
Obviously, Kai had to pull out, and then they've offered him someone else, or I think Mikey actually asked for somebody else. But obviously, the problem with that is that he was, I think, 20 pounds less than what he currently weighed. So he volunteered to do the cut. They didn't make him do it, as far as I know. He actually volunteered to do it. But a problem like we were just discussing there, an actual weight cut, you follow a process of about 10 days getting ready to do a weight cut and then come out of it. He wasn't doing that. He was, probably, and we've all seen what Mikey's diet looks like when not competing. Like if he's trying to gain weight, it must have been an insane amount of food. So he's like kind of going up to fight Kai, who's a huge individual, and then he's having to cut, so he's had to do something drastic to kind of try to do it, so that the fans have got like a fight to watch, which is, his main thing. But unfortunately, he's had to do that much of a harsh cut. He's really affected his health badly and actually hospitalised himself. So it's a real shame, but I think it's one that he did because he wanted to give his fans a fight. I definitely don't think anybody thinks, badly of him or that he's missed weight, or it's definitely not one of those circumstances at all.
Yeah, I agree. I think Mikey, he's just, as a fan and casual observer, he really loves jiu-jitsu. He loves the fans. He wants to do right by the sport. And it seems like in trying to do that, he endangered himself. And I kind of put it on one, in that, yes, they didn't make him do this. He accepted it, but they should never have put him in that position.
I agree with you. I think obviously they didn't, force him to do it. He volunteered to do it. But there is kind of, and it's the same for all organisations, a duty of care that they have to the athletes. Athletes want to compete, and they'll do everything they can to compete. But there needs to be kind of checks in place to prevent this from happening. Now, one championship are actually one of the better ones for this, because how they do their weight cuts is you can only put on so much weight after the weight cut. You have to be within a certain distance in fight week. You also have to pass rehydration tests, so you can't do like normal weight cutting, etc. So they're normally one of the better ones for athlete well-being. So it's just a shame how it's kind of a perfect storm of horribleness, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. And it was surprising, because everything I know about one, and actually I learned a lot about one by listening to Mike talk on podcasts about it, is that it's run by somebody who's a fan, and they have the hydration tests, and they do seem to emphasize safety. And I think your words of a perfect storm are spot on, in that sometimes there's things more, Mike wanted to fight. He wanted to give a fight to the fans. One has, this big night planned in Denver, and they want to make it happen. And there's a lot of money on the line, but he's also their star on the jiu-jitsu side of it. He's one of their biggest competitors, if not their biggest. And so there needed to be somebody saying this is too far, and there just wasn't.
Like I say, it's easy to look like hindsight. Hindsight is 20/20, isn't it?
That's true.
But ultimately, he wanted to compete. They wanted him to compete. He is their biggest jiu-jitsu star. He's on an unbelievable tear at the moment. He's made really short work of some incredible jiu-jitsu players. So to see him versus Kai, who's obviously much bigger than him, and one again, just an incredible athlete. We've seen their performances at CGI and stuff like that. There's a lot of eyes on jiu-jitsu at the moment following CGI and things, so maybe a bit too much pressure was maybe put on them, but I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's hard to say. We're obviously hindsight's 20/20, and we're kind of looking at it with the limited information we have. But I guess the takeaway is we don't blame Mikey. Hopefully, a lesson can be learned here to make things safer moving forward.
Yeah, I think it's something that, again, it's a part of the sport, weight cutting. It always will be, unfortunately. It's probably never going away. But I think it's one of those things where people need to look at it and weight cut appropriately. I think, again, this was a bit of a freak accident, but we do see plenty of bad weight cuts and, horrific, like, horror stories and things. So hopefully not too many in the future.
Yeah, hopefully not. What advice would you give to someone who's training, competing, but this isn't their full-time job? They're kind of a hobbyist, amateur, competitive hobbyist in terms
Yeah.
of maintenance, nutrition, and then making weight when they do compete.
Yeah. So when it comes to like let's say, a serious hobbyist, how we would kind of like categorize this person.
Yeah.
When it comes to competition, they're generally in two kind of camps. They are either one who compete a lot to get competition experience, because competing in of itself is a skill. To get used to it, to have a game plan, to, deal with competition day and nerves and all those kind of things is a skill in itself. So there's generally people who want to compete a lot to get, map time in the competition circuit. And then there's people who are only looking to a couple of select competitions per year. And they're generally the bigger ones, the Worlds, Pans, European Championships over here, like, the big IBJJF events, ADCC, things like that. So for this person over here, I would recommend not weight cutting at all. Get yourself to a point where you're eating, you're in a good, healthy place. You can maintain your body weight easily, and you can fuel your training sessions. Your recovery's good. You feel good at all your training sessions. You're coming into each one fresh and feeling great. But don't cut weight, because then this will allow you to just easily compete and slot into competitions, and you'll feel better for it as you get used to competing. Now, the ones over here where you go into bigger competitions is where we might look at maybe doing, diets and weight cuts for them, because you might be wanting to fit in certain weight classes that gives you the very, very best example. And this is generally, this end is generally purple belt and above. This is generally purple belt and below. Now, the advantages that you get from weight cutting and being in a lighter weight class at this end won't make much of a difference to you. The biggest difference that you will make here is how strong you are, how fast you are, and your skill set, how good you are at jiu-jitsu. This side over here, especially black belt, sub-only events, they are won by the tiniest of margins. So they are looking for a 1% difference is huge. In pro athletes and things like that. It's massive. If you look at the recent Olympics, the 100-meter male race, what the finishing line photograph looked like, and that was, milliseconds of difference. And that's kind of that's the kind of level where they're after the smallest difference. So weight cutting and things like that is very, very beneficial over here. But for this one, I would say your health and performance needs to be the main thing that you're looking at. For a lot of people, putting yourself through harsh cuts and things like that will actually be detrimental to your performance than not doing it. Because don't forget, jiu-jitsu is a performance sport. This is kind of we want to be able to perform well. The goal isn't whoever, you don't get any extra points for being lighter. You've got to be able to perform well. So don't get me wrong, if you are an individual on the larger side and you do have weight to lose for your health, etc., do that, but do that over a period of time. And maybe a good thing actually for that is to have certain jiu-jitsu competitions mapped out throughout the year at certain weight classes. So my goal is to be in this weight class for this one, and then this weight class for this one, and the good kind of goals along the way for you to hit. But yeah, that's how I would kind of categorize it, really, so people can be the healthiest and get the most out of their jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day is the most important, and I think a good guidepost, especially for people, who this isn't their living, but it is something maybe that they love.
Yeah. And sometimes doing like diets and things like that can become all consuming. You know,
Yeah.
it, at certain levels, it might mean that you can't go out for dinner with loved ones, social events,
Hmm.
certain things with your kids, like all that kind of thing. Like sometimes that trade off isn't worth it.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
what you kind of need to focus on is having a good, nutritious, performance based diet like year round, because then that'll take care of your health and your performance and things like that. And then you still can have like, the odd treat. Like, you can go out to dinner, you can have, a couple of drinks with loved ones, you can, take your kids for some fast food as a treat for them and all that kind of thing. You don't have to kind of obsess over it and go, oh my God, this is going to, like, I can't eat this because I've got to make weight next Saturday or anything like that. So, but this
Yeah.
side, that's very different when we talk pros and stuff like that. But this side, everyday kind of people, that's kind of how I would look at it.
Yeah. Balance, moderation,
Yep, absolutely.
name of the game.
Yep, the things that we is dead easy to say, but very hard to actually do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because human beings are
100%.
terrible with balance. Like, absolutely. We don't want to have one cookie. We want to have all the cookies.
Yeah.
Um,
Something
if,
I've yeah.
if you ever
Something I
want,
found for myself. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, if you want to see how far like removed you are from reality, check out what
Hmm.
is an actual serving size of peanut butter, and
Oh
then
no,
what you
what is it?
actually it's like 15 grams. It's like a teaspoon. It's tiny, but
Hmm.
most people will get like dessert spoon and nearly get the full jar on it when they do it, which I don't blame you for at all.
Yeah. No, totally. Something I found with myself too is that like I don't know that I could ever be on that side of it with like the more professional side, because if I restrict myself and say I can never have ice cream or I can never have chocolate,
Yeah,
then all of a sudden I have a bad day and I eat like a whole pint,
yeah,
versus if I give myself like a piece of chocolate a day, it I keep it
yeah.
maintained.
So, firstly, let's be honest. Everyone eats the pint of ice cream. There is no one out
Oh
there
yeah.
who just has a couple of scoops of ice cream. Even if there are, these people are psychotic and should be studied.
Yeah.
So everybody eats the pint. Now,
Yeah.
a good way to kind of think about restriction is kind of like a pendulum. So the more that
Hmm.
you pull it this way, so the more restrictive you are, at a certain point, the more it's going to swing back the other way. So if
Hmm.
you were like, don't eat any chocolate or ice cream or basically foods that you really enjoy, that are
Yeah.
really, at a certain point, something's going to happen and you're going to snap and you're just going to eat everything that can't outrun you. Um,
Hmm.
but if you restrict yourself a little bit, then have like a bit of chocolate or an ice cream, once a week or a couple of times a week, the swing isn't
Hmm.
that much. So it doesn't utterly like derail any kind of progress that you were trying to make. Now,
Yeah.
people kind of fall into two categories when it comes to having treat food, chocolate and stuff
Hmm.
like that. There's some people who, like you say, can have, a couple of bits of chocolate or a chocolate bar or a little bit of ice cream, and that's it, they're fine. They can have
Hmm.
that moderation and they're great. Then there's
Hmm.
other people, if they have one cookie, they're eating all the cookies and a pint of ice cream and ordering a pizza and. So
Hmm.
this is most people, by the way.
Yeah.
So the key here is to, when you're doing it, kind of make sure that you're doing it, like on a night, or you're only going to do it for certain occasions and things like that. So you can only
Hmm.
kind of, like, if you're going to do it for, a certain amount of time and then kind of like stop, go to bed, and then get back on it the next day. Which for some people
Yeah.
is very, very hard to do. There's a lot of stuff coming out like where Ozempic and things like that is really helping people,
Yeah.
and those kind of things. But that's like a different conversation. But yeah, so I would just kind of like, if you are going to try and eat like treat food and things like that, maybe have it on a night and have it as like your last meal of the day, and then you can kind of go to bed and then wake up and then resume normal service.
Okay, very, very interesting. So, I guess with that, I've got one final question for you, which this goes more on the side of the BJJ practitioner. I ask this of all my guests. If you had one piece of advice for someone just starting Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, what would you tell them?
So it's a piece of advice that my coach gave me, and he says all the time, which I think is a great piece of advice, is whoever's breathing hardest is losing.
Mm-hmm.
So the biggest thing that we all have to get over is our ability, when we start jiu-jitsu, to relax, when we're rolling and things like that. It's such a foreign thing to so many people when they start, that everybody is so tense and just going absolutely ham at it and things like that. The person who can relax, regulate the breathing, will make better decisions and calculated decisions, and ultimately kind of do better. So if you can kind of be mindful of your own breathing when you're training, then chances are that you'll be doing a lot better. That's what I would kind of say from a training perspective.
Very true. Yeah. Well, Mike, if the listeners want to find you, find out more about your services, educate themselves, where can they find you?
You can find me on my website, which is unorthodoxnutrition.co.uk, or on any social media platform, which is just Unorthodox Nutrition. If anybody's got any kind of questions where, I've touched on a topic that they want to know a little bit more about, or they have their own specific circumstances where they could really just kind of need a bit pointing in the right direction or whatever, just send me a DM. I'm always more than happy to help anybody.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, Mike. And with that, I guess we'll both go about our days. But thank you so much for your time and for your information. I think there were a lot of things we touched on that just completely changed my way of thinking about nutrition and training. So thank you for that.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. All right, have a good one.
Cheers now.
Cheers.